Hey, welcome to Fresh Start's Addiction Kitchen, where we serve up time-tested solutions from our 39-year-old recipe book for recovery. And whether you're an addict, connected to one, or just looking for the ingredients to maintain sobriety, there's something on the menu for you today. So pull up a seat and let's have a chat, because the best conversations happen around the kitchen table. Hey, today's episode is brought to you by the Great Greek Mediterranean Grill. This is timeless classic Greek. They are known for timeless flavors and legendary service. I just attended the grand opening, their fifth store in celebration, and I think I had the Great Greek gyro with chicken. I'm telling you, man, it was amazing. And if you are in Central Florida, you need to check it out if you haven't already. In Maitland or Orlando Sky House, Winter Garden, Orlando Lake Nona, and the most recent, they just opened in Celebration, the Great Greek Mediterranean Grill. Never forget when I was sitting around the kitchen table when I get home from school or I get home from a sporting event or something, especially late at night. I'd sit down at the kitchen table with my mother. We'd play cards. We'd have coffee together, and we just talked. We had great conversations. And, it's kind of where everyone gathers to talk about real life. And this podcast is about being real and finding solutions to the epidemic called addiction. We specifically talk about drug and alcohol addiction, but no matter what your vice is, I pray this podcast will help you take your next steps towards sobriety. And today's episode, we welcome the Program Director of Fresh Start Ministries of Central Florida, Pastor Tim Carlsword. Tim is a certified professional recovery coach and has been with Fresh Start for 14 years as a counselor and also our Program Director. And he's done quite a bit. But I'll tell you what, he has a longer history than that with Fresh Start. And today's episode is called "You Can't Handle the Truth." We'll talk a little bit more about what that's about. But Tim, I'm so glad to work with you. I'm so glad you're on our first episode here, and I think what we want to do is just talk a little bit about your background. You have a longer history than just the 14 years that you've been on staff here. Tell a little bit about how that began. And, I remember you telling me a little bit of story about your grandmother coming to Florida in a covered wagon. We can go back that far, because I think it tells a lot about you and where you've come from and how you've achieved this position to make such an impact in an addict's life. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Scott. I really consider this an honor especially to be on the first broadcast, and this is very exciting to see this being produced and what the goal is for this podcast, and that is to spread hope. And there's a lot of hope that needs to be spread out there in this world, because we have so much, obviously, that is out there that is different. First of all, one slight correction. It wasn't my grandmother. It was my mother.
Ah, it was your mother.
My mother, yeah. She was 3 years old back in 1921. Her and her family was a poor farm family up in North Florida in Jasper. And Grandpa, farming was bad up there, and he heard through the grapevine that fishing was good in good old Vero Beach, Fort Pierce area. So he packed up the covered wagon and he moved to Vero Beach.
See, I thought you were so much younger than that. I thought it was your grandmother. So
I look younger.
You're almost 30. So hang in there.
Yeah,
that's good.
Okay, keep telling me more. No, but so they settled in Vero, and my father's family also settled in Vero about the same time, about 1921. And later on in life, they met and married, and so my roots are in Vero Beach, born and raised, and family's been there obviously since 1921. So, we grew up there. We knew a lot of people. My parents were founding members of the boyhood church that I attended, First Covenant Church in Vero Beach, and now it's a different name and it's moved on. But in any case, that's where things started to happen for me. I lived a sheltered life for many, many years. My being raised in the church, when from a very young age, actually birth, to about age 16, And that's when I started making some choices on my own that did not lead to healthy solutions. And being that I was guarded from the real world that was out there, I didn't really get a chance to understand how that real world worked. And boy, did I get a rude awakening.
I bet. So my question too is, when you were going to church, I mean, were you required to be there Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and you were inundated with kind of the Bible and good teaching through those 16 years, right?
Very much so. If the doors were open to the church, we were there.
Yeah.
And that's just how it was. And so, I got very involved with the church and the youth group and, and so forth. My mother, she taught, she was a Sunday school teacher, and, those old flannel grass.
I grew up with that. Yeah, that's awesome.
So, it was just a really good time as far as me learning about God. The Lord actually called me to the ministry when I was 12 years old, standing in a particular place where now is the pastor's office. And,
right.
So a lot of history there, a lot of history. And, but at the age of 16, started making some choices, and wanted to experience, I was kind of a loner. Very shy, didn't want to be, around a lot of people because I just had this image that they didn't, I wasn't good enough for everybody. And so the crowd that I started hanging out with, they were drinking. And I can remember where I was the first time that I drank a beer, and where I was, who I was with, how old I was, 16 years of age, and I couldn't stand it. I hated it. It tasted terrible, but it got me in with fitting in with people that I thought I needed to be around, and then that turned into a habit, and that habit turned into an addiction, and 16 years later, I ended up at Fresh Start.
Wow. So, how did you find Fresh Start, and what were the initial thoughts about, is this something that I really need to do?
Well, scared to death was the first initial thought, because I'd never been out of the comfort of my home,
Yeah.
and my mother was a very big influence in my life, and so was my father to a certain degree, but he was a little bit, standoffish, and really didn't understand that, why he was like that, until later on in life. And, it was just, for him, he, and went through, he was a World War II vet, and went through the Battle of the Bulge, and there was a lot of things that he experienced over there that I didn't realize at the time that I was young, and one reason why he was so standoffish, and my mother she was very outgoing, and what I call a good old country girl, and she was raised on the farm, and then my grandpa moved to Vero, and they built a house, and they fished, and they grew tomatoes. And they were some pioneers. They were some true Floridians.
I guess, yeah.
For sure. And but it was part of when I was in that environment, that at church I was very protected.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know what the outside world was really like. And when I started to experience that, it appealed to me at first, because everybody was having fun, and so forth like that, and meeting new people, and but make a very long story short, it led me into a life that became very addictive and very destructive in my life, that led me to Fresh Start. And I got to Fresh Start I went to a program that was recommended to me by my local church in Vero. And that ended up being the same ministry that our founder of Fresh Start, Pastor Joe and Kelly Cordovano, went to get their training for Fresh Start. So, I ended up out there, only stayed for about 6 weeks. I wasn't really ready, 6 to 8 weeks, something like that, and had to go back out to the School of Hard Knocks and get some more training, because I just wasn't ready, wasn't totally surrendered is what it was. And so when I did that, and then got into some more trouble, and ended up back in facing some serious consequences, and called out at Dunklin to see if I could get back in, and they referred me here to Fresh Start, and that's how I got to Fresh Start.
So how long were you in the program as a client?
Here in the program, I was here in the program for 6 months. Back then, it was a
Right.
6-month program.
Right.
And I ended up staying on. The Lord really kind of put it on my heart to, I really wanted to get involved with helping others, and especially in addictions. And so I stayed on the program. I was here for about a year and a half, in addition to that 6 months, for a total of 2 years. And in that process, a little story about how I met my wife came up, and Pastor Joe and another gentleman by the name of Pastor Craig Marlette started a little church called Fellowship of the Lamb. And that was a very small church, and we took the guys there in the program. I was kind of like what they called house manager back then. I drove the guys to church. We had this cool little van too. It looked like, you remember the Mod Squad?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
It looked
Link
like
and
that kind
Pete,
of van. Yeah.
Julie,
Yeah. It was cool. And so we were over there off of Lakemont, for many years, and so they started this church, and we were taking the guys there, and then about 6 months later, Pastor Joe and Pastor Craig co-pastored the church. So and then shortly thereafter, they asked me to to commit to and pray about being involved with the church and go through a training program that they wanted to train me in ministry. So I prayed about it, said yes. I felt like that's what God was leading me to do, and we did. We started, and 6 months into it, the year commitment, the Lord put it on Pastor Joe's heart to have the guys go back to a little bit larger church, because he was just wanting them to be fed properly, and the small church, it was difficult in that. And so I said, well, okay, we got a problem though. I've committed to here for a year. And he goes, that's right. He says, well, you fulfill your commitment, I'll get somebody else to drive the van. Well, the very next Sunday, my now wife attended the small church, a Fellowship of the Lamb, with a friend of hers, and that's how we met.
Isn't that great?
And 30 years later, we're still married. How about that, huh? God bless her.
You married up. I've met your wife.
Up,
yeah, you married way over your head, just like me. Hey, let's fast forward then. You became a counselor, and then how long were you a counselor? And what a great opportunity for you to be walking that walk and going through those experiences as the same guys that are sitting across the table from you, and now you're counseling them. Just briefly, tell a little bit about how you got in that position and some of the experiences of just counseling men, in the paths that they're going that were very similar to your own.
Well, I tell you, I got to tell a short story before I get to that point, how I got there. After I met Shannon and we got married, I left Fresh Start and kind of spread my wings and started a business of my own. I had a bus charter and limousine business for 20 years. And about 2010, the Lord started pricking my heart to get back involved on a volunteer basis. And so I contacted Pastor Joe and came back, and I taught for on Thursdays for a season. And
you taught the men.
I taught the men
in programs in
program,
the evening.
correct.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
correct. And so then there was a position that came open, and I was just talking to both him and Miss Kelly, and I just made a comment. It just came out of nowhere, and I said, "Well, shoot, I ought to come back and work for you guys."
Yeah.
And they said, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Yeah, And so we worked it out where I could run the business for a little bit and be a counselor and during the evening and that type of thing. And it was great. I really enjoyed that. It was something that the Lord had really been pulling at my heart for a long time. Even though I enjoyed what I did, in the limousine and bus charter business, it wasn't fulfilling a commitment that I felt like that I had made to God many years ago at the age of 12.
Right.
And so anyway, we make a long story short, we made it work, and it worked for a while, and then they came to me and asked me to pray about being the program director, and took some time to seek the Lord with that, because in that, I really couldn't run a business and be the program director.
Right.
So I decided to close the business, and was able to sell some of it, but just during those periods of times, it was just coming out of the financial crisis, and we were just getting back to profitability. And but anyway, so then I became the program director, and that's what I do now.
Before we get into that, one of the things that I want this podcast to cater to all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds. When they look up addiction, I want them to have some good answers and understand really more about addiction. And you've said a couple times that the Lord spoke to my heart, or He pricked your heart, or what exactly do you mean by that?
Well, sometimes in life we have a direction from the Lord that He just kind of nudges us a little bit. He puts a desire in our heart, and the Lord says in the Word that He will give us the desires of our heart. Well, I truly believe that He's the one that puts those desires in our heart and directing us in the path that He wants us to take. And for me, that's what it was for me. I always have had a desire to help people. Now, in the beginning years and way back, it was a little bit dysfunctional through codependency tendencies and things of that nature that I learned from my mother, and other people that were close to me that really didn't understand addictions, and thinking they were helping me get out of my addiction, but in essence, what they were doing, they were enabling me to continue in the addiction. And until they got help and some understanding, they didn't really understand what they were doing. And once they did, then they got healthy, and they were able to make some choices and decisions that involved my life, that directed me to get the help that I needed.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Now that you are program director, just kind of briefly give us an idea of what it is you do. What are your responsibilities?
Basically, my responsibilities is to manage the program, to take the policies that are set forth and manage the program accordingly, and managing the staff and preparing them, and also giving them what they need to provide the services for our clients. Part of also is my responsibilities is to screen the potential new clients coming in, talk to them, talk to parents, talk to family. Families reach out generally before the addict will, and my heart goes out for them, because they're at a place just like my mother and my family was 33 years ago. They didn't know what to do. They did not know how to help me in any way, shape, or form, because everything that they did, it just seems like it just blew up. Right. And so what I love to do, I have a passion for families, not only the addict, but for families too, because sometimes the families, and most of the time, the families are the residual effect of what the addict's behavior has produced. And so, and in that help, that's where we're talking to families. That's part of my responsibilities is also to we do a family support group meeting on Tuesday evenings, and that's an outreach that we can share with people that specifically is for the families. The addict is not involved with that. It is open to the public meeting. It's not just for the men that are in our program. So it's a meeting that really helps educate families, help them to learn what they can do more healthier to help the addict get the help that they need.
Right. So let's say mom calls in and she gets a hold of Nathan, our intake specialist, who answers the phone and says, my son Billy Bob is going down the wrong path and he needs desperate help. What's the process that Nathan would do, and how do we get that person in the program?
First, Nathan would explain thoroughly to the family about the program, how the program works, how it functions, the requirements of the program, and describe to the family members exactly what we would describe to the addict when they call. And then once they have that information, then they will set something up where they will talk to their loved one that is addicted, share the program with them, maybe even make some ultimatums. Hey, look, you either going to get help or I love you, but you got to go somewhere else to live because you can't live here. You can't bring that chaos and that dysfunction and that destruction into my house anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's the toughest thing that we see families have to make, especially parents. I'm a father myself. I have 3 children, and by the grace of God, they're adult and they're healthy and they're doing well. But there was a time that they weren't. And my wife and I had to make a decision. Okay, are we going to practice what we preach, or are we going to trust the Lord and put them in God's hands and make some moves ourselves to motivate them to move in the direction that they need to move in to get the help that they need? And we had to learn how to turn our kids loose and trust God. Mm-hmm. We say sometimes, in the Christian community, we love God, we trust Him, and so forth. Well, put your hands in God, put your children in God's hands, and step back from that situation. You'll find out how quick you really trust God. And I would encourage everybody to do so, mm-hmm. because there's a time for that, and there's a time not to. There's different times to do different things, and so there's not a rubber stamp on the answers. There's not a rubber stamp on recovery. It's all individually the circumstances may be different for others, but basically the rule of thumb, is that they have to experience their own choices in life and make their own choices in life. We can't make them for them. So as Nathan describes the program to the family, then the family takes that to the addict, and then the addict really actually, because, I can remember, even though it was 33 years ago, I can still remember the pain and misery that I went through the last 5 years of my addiction. I wanted out of that lifestyle so bad, but just did not know how to take the steps to get the help that I needed. Yeah. And with that information that we can give the families, and then the addict gets that little nudge, oh, that would be great, to himself, most mm-hmm. likely, mm-hmm. And then, or maybe they're forced to, the parents have said, hey, look, either you're going to get help or you're going to have to move out and live somewhere else. Or, that guy with that black robe and the gavel, I think they call him the judge or her, may force them to get the help that they need by saying, hey, look, if you don't get help, you're going to spend some time behind bars, mm-hmm. And so that motivates the addict to pursue with recovery and start their road to recovery.
So we've explained to them how the program works, mm-hmm. and they say, okay, I'd like to take it to the next level. I'd like to see if this is a good fit. We want to see if it's a good fit for them. They want to see if it's a good fit for us, Fresh Start here, right? So let's say they come in. Now we do an intake interview. Is that right?
Well, first, before we get to that point, we have to do a phone interview with them on the telephone.
I did skip a step there, didn't I? Yeah, of course. They call. We give them, and then Nathan will kind of give his assessment to decide whether this might be a good fit or not, with your direction as well. He'll come to you and say, hey, here's a potential client that is looking to be a part of the program. Let's decide, then you make the final call, whether he comes in. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. What happens is that Nathan will explain the program to them, and then he will evaluate whether they're a potential good candidate or not. He'll come to me, and we'll discuss it, and then we'll either schedule a phone interview. It takes about 30 to 45 minutes, which generally is with me or one of the staff. Yeah. Primarily it's with me. And then at that time, if they are, sometimes we'll just do the interview right then, mm-hmm. Depending on the candidate and how, willing he is to get help. Because when people are asking for help, when they're looking for help, they may not wait until tomorrow for a scheduled appointment. They need the help now. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes we need to go ahead and move forward with that. there's some other factors that are involved in rescheduling. It kind of tells you, okay, how serious the man is and that type of thing. We just make that as a call, at the moment. But he'll bring the phone interview back to me, and then I'll do the 45-minute phone interview with him. At the end of that interview, I'll make the decision whether to accept them in the program or not. About a 99.9% chance that that's what's going to happen, and I'll tell them that once we get through the interview. Mm-hmm. But we always reserve the right to make that final decision in the face-to-face. And that's what we will schedule after they commit to this is what they want to do,
right.
And there is an entrance fee that they have to pay. It's a $300 entrance fee that they have to pay, to schedule that or that intake interview. And then they come in and sit down with us, and we'll talk to them face-to-face. And sometimes there's a lot, you see a little bit different than you hear on the phone, in the face-to-face. But generally speaking, the man's ready. If he's willing to do a phone interview, he's willing to come in and do an intake. Typically speaking, he's willing to start his road to recovery.
What if there's someone out there listening that says, I think I have a problem, but I'm not too sure? What are the telltale signs of an addict, and how do I know I am one? Because there's a lot of people who say, I'm a social drinker. Or I have X amount of beers, or I'm talking about alcohol right now, of course, but I only drink on the weekends. But when I'm drinking, I have 15 beers, but it's just on Saturdays or just on Sundays. What are some of those telltale signs in your experience of whether somebody's an addict or not?
One story I have is when I was doing a phone interview, and I was talking to this guy, and we were going over his criminal record, and he was telling me about all these DUIs he had. And I think he had 3 or 4, 3 in the state of Florida as a felony.
Yeah.
And so we got to the point where his addiction, and he failed to mention about alcohol. And he mentioned, marijuana, and some other illicit drugs. And I said, well, wait a second. I said, what about the alcohol? He said, I don't have a problem with that. I go, really? I says, why do you feel that way? He says, well, I can stop when I need to and that type of thing. I said, so you've got 3 or 4 DUIs? He said, 4. I said, you got 4 DUIs and you don't see that you have a problem? And he said,
Yeah, let me think about that. Statistics don't lie.
He really didn't realize it.
Yeah.
And a lot of addicts do not realize they have a problem until they stop for a few minutes and look around them and look at the difficulties that are created. Maybe they've lost their job. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're struggling at work to keep their job. Maybe they have destroyed relationships. Maybe their girlfriend, fiance, or wife has said, I'm out of here. And that's problems. And when you start experiencing problems to that degree, when you start to experience the need for the alcohol, the drugs, whatever your drug may be or whatever your stronghold may be, or life-controlling problem, and you can't live without it, then that's typically a line that you've crossed now on the addictive side.
Yeah.
Where you just can't live without it.
This episode's called You Can't Handle the Truth, maybe from a famous movie, but I think there's a lot of application to that. When somebody is sitting in an intake and you are interviewing them with regards to asking them questions about kind of where they are, what their thought process is of how their addiction is going, or wherever they kind of self-analyze themselves. How do you know? I mean, what are you looking for as a good candidate for someone who would take well to the program in that interview? What's your thought process as you're trying to assess them and evaluate their situation?
It's real simple. I tell them I'm evaluating them on 3 levels. Number 1, how well they're able to take the instructions that I'm going to give them in a few seconds about the interview, because I want the interview to go a certain way, and because I want to see if that person is able to take instructions and then follow those instructions. Number 2, how committed they are to their recovery. And then number 3, how teachable they are.
Yeah.
And those are the 3 elements that I'm really looking for. And their attitude is extremely important. If they've got a real nasty attitude, or they got a sarcastic attitude, or they got just a bad attitude in general, that's going to be a very difficult person to learn anything. It's going to be he's going to have a difficult time being teachable.
Yeah.
And so we can address that. We don't necessarily tell them no. But what I like to do is I like to confront, or address it is a better word, because confronting kind of sounds like, a little bit aggressive. I like to say, hey, look, we're going to address this, and, and I'll bring up some different things for them to look at. And sometimes it's received favorably, sometimes it's not, But, as I tell everybody that comes into our program is a great environment, very positive, uplifting environment, but it is a no-nonsense program, meaning we just don't have time for all that nonsense of the street and, that lifestyle and so forth like that. And we're really looking for serious-minded men that want to become the men of God that God created them to be.
So when you sit across from somebody, everybody that you are sitting across from in that intake, they always tell the truth, right?
Yeah. The old saying, if an addict is talking, then they're lying.
Yeah. Your mouth is moving.
Yeah. And so that's the challenge.
Yeah.
And, that's where, instead of being accusatory, asking questions, asking pointed questions, open-ended questions, so they can't give you a yes or no or, a one-word answer.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that really kind of reveals who they really are. And then you can, when it comes out, then you can address that as well.
Yeah.
By the time that interview is over, hopefully they say, you know what, I need a program,
Yeah, exactly.
and I need to commit to this.
Hey, are you interested in becoming a title sponsor of Addiction Kitchen? Reach out to us using the contact information below, and we'll be in touch. Plus, if you'd like to join us in helping others, consider donating just $20 a month at freshstartministries.com/donate. Some people even do it for 1 full year. Every bit makes a difference. Today's episode is brought to you by the Great Greek Mediterranean Grill. This is timeless classic Greek, and the first time I went, I had the lamb kebab, I believe, and or the second time I was there, I guess it was, and I became a great Greek geek immediately. And I know one of the owners personally, and everything he does is with excellence. From the quality of food to guest service. I just attended the grand opening of their 5th store. That's in Celebration. And if you are in Central Florida, you need to check them out because they are fantastic. They have a location in Maitland, in Orlando Sky House, Winter Garden, Orlando Lake Nona, and as I mentioned, the most recent opening in Celebration. The Great Greek Mediterranean Grill. Check it out. You got to check it out. When can you tell if someone is, I know their mouth is moving, but really, when you're evaluating them, how can you tell if they're not being quite square with you? Is there a sign, or is there something that you you go, I'm sure, by many years of instinct?
That's exactly it. It's a lot of experience. You have to be someone that is observing. You just can't ask a question and expect, them to give you the answer. I look at body language. Body language is probably the loudest voice that we have, more than our audio voice. And so how they answer the question, the tone of voice that they answer the question, their overall demeanor, and then if there's any doubt whether the truth is coming up, then you kind of throw something at them, to, kind of test them, whether it's, just throw something, say something that, we always used to say, well, I'm going to throw something against the wall and, see if it sticks, and to see if they are, how they respond or how they react.
Right.
because when we share something with somebody, when we answer somebody, we're either going to react or respond, one of the two. And if they're reactive, that means that they are defensive. If they're defensive, there's a reason why they're defensive. And most of the time, it's they're not telling us the truth. So we got to nail that down and kind of, try to get to the source of that and try to expose it as much as possible.
Yeah, I think it's the whole reason is we want complete and total honesty, and only then typically is when we have the ability to say, okay, now we know where to begin. Now we know how to help you. Now we know what situations you are. But not only that, from a standpoint of, you mentioned the word surrender. I think it's a matter of, don't you feel that just when somebody truly surrenders to the program, this has been, we're almost 39 years of experience here that the Court of Honors have set up. I mean, it's been tried and true, and we've over the years have trial and error, and we've learned from mistakes. We've enhanced the things that definitely work. We've got a formula here that works. And for those who are successful in the program and they go through our 12-month program and graduate, I see so far those guys that are graduating, those are the guys that have surrendered the truth. They have surrendered themselves to the program and been able to be impacted by that so that they can, obviously impact others. And I see them being the leaders in our clients. Don't you feel?
I do. And, and when you say, I just want to make sure everybody understands, when we say the program, we're not necessarily talking about Fresh Start. We're talking about the program of the Road to Recovery, which we offer here at Fresh Start. And the men that are making it, that graduate our program, that work through the program, and it's, let me just say this, the program is not an easy program. It's a very grueling day. Our structure is at night, and so these men work all day long, a full-time job, and then they come home by 6, and then they have to, structure starts immediately. So they're under some type of a structure from 6 to 9:30 or 9 o'clock every night. And the ones that go through the program, that complete the program, that work the program as it is designed. We have a teaching called working versus attending. And because you can attend a program and you can check the boxes off, although that's something that we don't allow here. We don't want a guy here that is just, trying to get out of trouble, get his family back, or get the judge to say, okay, you don't have to go to prison now, you can come here. But we want a guy to work the program as it is designed so he can deal with those root issues that he can. The guys that do are the ones that are making it. Those are and apply the tools that they learn here. Yeah. A lot of guys make mistakes when they leave, and they struggle sometimes when they leave the program, or any program for that matter, and they don't take with them the tools that they learned while they and apply them. Then that's when they struggle. The ones that surrender, as you were saying, totally, and work the program as it is designed, and then take those tools with them and then apply those tools. Like today, this morning, I just had a young man call me out of the blue. He graduated 2 years ago. He said, listen, I just needed to reach out. At first, I thought he was going to want to come back, but no, he said, I was just needing to reach out so I don't have to come back because I'm feeling like, I'm at a point in my life where using is just the next step. Yeah. So we had a great conversation for a half an hour. We got off the phone. He was in great shape. He's going to call back in a couple of days and touch base. And that's working. That's using your tools. That's making phone calls and talking to people that can help you work through any challenges that you may have. I'm a very big proponent of Philippians 4:13. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. We have to make the steps, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had somebody ask me when I was telling them about the podcast, they said, well, is this going to kind of be the solution for them so they wouldn't have to, come into a program at all? And I said, that's kind of like walking through Whole Foods and expecting to lose weight. You have to buy and apply. You have to invest into it, have buy-in, and commit yourself to this program. And then the application is everything. You've got to actually work it and do the work.
Correct.
And when you do the work, that's when dividends pay, right?
Correct. And also you have to have relationships within that work, because you can't work it by yourself. It's very difficult to do that and be held accountable, to have people call you out on when you're not working it as you should, and then also to be there to affirm you when you are working it, to give you what you need with respect to that side of the equation as well. Relationships are hugely important, and so without relationships, true recovery is just about impossible. And and having, and especially the accountability, and that's what we have here as well. When a man comes into the program and he's here for the year, I mean, you can't not bump into somebody.
Right. Right.
We're everywhere. Whether it's the staff or whether it's clients or whatever. And so you always have somebody that you can talk to. Is when you graduate the program, or when guys decide to leave early, and you get that in recovery. Sometimes you'll get guys that I have to ask to leave because they, from one reason or another, maybe they've used, because we have a zero tolerance for that. Maybe they have their they've disobeyed the rules to the level that, okay, we can't work with this anymore. So we have to make some tough decisions, just like family members have to make tough decisions in the beginning of their process and their road to recovery.
Yeah, we have 68 beds. We can house 70 guys we've done before, and in that program also we have big brothers as well, along with a personalized counselor, right?
Correct.
That will go through the process with them. And so we're talking a lot about with this episode. You can't handle the truth. They're going to get the truth spoken to them through teachings, through their counselor, through their big brother, through other people in the program that are maybe a little bit more mature and down the road in their process. Do you see that happening a lot?
Oh, quite a bit. I have a good saying that what's the difference between a smart man and a wise man? Smart man learns from his mistakes. Wise man learns from somebody else's mistakes. And that's what the relationships that we have here with the big brothers, who are men in the last part of their program, last phase of their program.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, not as a counselor, but just as a friend,
Right.
And building relationships and that type of thing. And then their counselors, that's the go-to guy. That's for a client. That is the guy's go-to guy for everything.
Yeah.
And the way we're set up is that if that client's counselor is off that day, we have other counselors that are here that he can speak to, and then the counselor gets the counseling notes and so forth like that. So we stay communicated with each other through a system that we have in place here that affords us, every time a staff counselor comes on shift, the first thing they do is they read up on the electronic reports to see if there's anything going on, and if there's maybe one of the guys is struggling with something, or maybe he's dealing with something.
Right.
That gives us a little bit more ammunition, if you would, information to help him work through whatever he's working through.
You and I have had conversations about this being, a lifelong program, and something where we want to stay connected to be a lifeline for them for years to come. We have an aftercare facility as well, and tell everyone a little bit about that, and how that benefits that addict that's going through the growth process.
I can remember when we affectionately call it Sober City. It's an apartment complex on the same lake just around the corner, and it is our aftercare, residential aftercare facility. And there was a time many years ago, probably 8, 9, 10 years ago, that we did not have that. And when the men graduated the program, it was difficult for them to go out and get an apartment because of most likely they had some type of, record on their, as far as criminal record, and it was very difficult for them to find an apartment and that type of thing. And this apartment complex came up, and I knew just as soon as Pastor Joe told me about it, I knew it was God, because we'd been praying about a place where the men could graduate the program,
Yeah.
and then they could go to another facility that's a little bit less structured, but still under accountability, and have to like an apartment complex, and this was perfect. And we have there are 2-bedroom apartments where each man has his own bedroom, and we have common areas of the kitchen, the bathroom, and living room and dining room, and it's perfect. And it gives them a chance not only to experience and go through that transition of being in a program, and with the accountability that you have here in the program, and transition into another setting with still accountability. Before, they were just transitioning out and they didn't have no place to go.
Right.
And a lot of times that was very difficult for them.
Right.
And this place is perfect. And so we have 40 apartments over there, and 2 men to an apartment, and it's on Lake Fairview. It's a great facility, beautiful facility, and and they have accountability with drug testing and periodically, and then also they have a weekly meeting over there as well for their community.
Right. Some of these guys, as we're talking about going through the program, we call it bud levels. Talk a little bit about that, how that benefits our counselors to help them through their growth.
Well, we have what we call bud cycles, and while the men are here for the year in the program, there's 3 cycles that they will go through. Now, this is a physiological phenomenon that goes on in the brain that eventually can affect them emotionally and spiritually. The first cycle is 4 to 6 weeks. The second cycle is 4 to 6 months. And the third cycle is 11 to 13 months. During those periods of time, they are at a heightened level of potential relapse. And you will notice that during those periods of time, they may have attitudes, they may have, there might be some irritations.
Different moods.
Yeah, different mood swings and so forth like that. So, and there's a bud up and there's a bud down. The bud up is, when you experience, I've got this handled, I got it.
Right.
That's all right. I don't need any help.
I've been sober for 2 months.
Yeah.
I'm solid.
Yeah. And then there's the bud down, where typically it has to do with depression and the woe is me and that type of thing. And so knowing these helps our counselors also to be on a lookout for these type of behaviors. And it also helps the men. We take them through a teaching on that as well. So they're not only getting it through teaching, they're also getting it through counseling as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the things that I was pretty impressed that we do with the men is every Sunday we get a chance to take them to a different church to get them different experiences, but they have an opportunity to worship with their family during that program. During that day, and I love that. There's so many things that I've walked in as the new executive director here, still getting my feet wet, learning after 6-7 months that I've been here, just the groundwork that's been laid. The trial and error that at first when you walk in, you go, why would we do it that way? And then you realize the successes that have come from the mistakes that were probably made early on in the beginning, and to see that develop, and then to see the other end of it where we have guys coming back to the program saying, thank you, this completely changed my life. July 4th, we have a homecoming, which is really cool, and everybody kind of comes back, and we celebrate the 4th of July with food and a big slide for the kids, and we do baptisms out in the lake, which is really cool as well. And it's great to see that family. It's great to see that. And what we're trying to do is, develop those people from within that do have a calling, that say, hey, this is something that I would like to go through your SLT, your servant leadership training program, where I can learn a little bit more about becoming someone who might be able to make a difference on this level and be maybe part of the staff even on down the road. And so as we grow, I think there's so many. We continue to grow in so many different areas, but we're starting to look at new opportunities and new ways to reach our community, but also make a global impact. And I mean from global and local, obviously, in our backyard, but also on a grander scale. And so Amen. I'm excited to see a lot of that happen. Our staff is phenomenal. These guys on the front line, our counselors that are dealing and ministering to these our men, our clients, to see what they go through every day and their heart and passion when somebody makes a wrong choice, and you just see their heart breaking because they know what potentially could be in store for that man as he decides to leave the program or he's made a bad choice while he's out there in the world. It really is an incredible experience to watch that. But then the other side of that is to see our men find those successes and to watch them grow. One of the things that we do here is sociogram, and where they are confronted by their peers to help them be affirmed, but also help them with correction. And how does that go over, man? Because that's a difficult thing for these guys. These dudes are standing in front of other people, their peers, and their peers are kind of calling them out on some behavior that they've had. How does that work?
That is a fun to watch. Oh, yeah.
Fun to watch, yeah.
It really is. The dynamic of that is because I got to paint the picture here now. A lot of guys that are in addictions comes from the past similar to mine. I mean, we've been down that road before, and these are pretty tough characters.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
But a good. I mean, there's many that are, they might be tough and rough and all that, but deep down inside they got a heart.
Oh, no doubt. Yep.
And to see these grown men. Exercise Ephesians 4:15 and 16, where it says that we are to speak the truth in love so we can grow unto him who is he, Christ the Lord. And so that's what we do. The sociogram is all about speaking the truth in love, and it's something that we really emphasize. This is out of love. This is not, you're not speaking the truth to somebody because they upset you or they did something that alienated you or upset you. You're doing it because you see them in doing something or saying something that is a behavior that is unbecoming of their recovery, and you're loving them enough. Because most of the time, when you speak the truth in love, as far as giving somebody a caution, some people would call that a negative. I don't call it a negative. If somebody loves you enough to give you a caution, that's a positive, because you have an opportunity to grow in that behavior, whatever that may be. Mm-hmm. But to see them, because we also make them, when they stand up and they speak their vote, they have to look at each other and they say, "Brother, I love you. I love you too." And to see these guys from the street say that is very challenging for them, and I will not let them go on until I hear it.
Yeah, I
have to hear it myself.
Yeah. And I didn't hear you. You need to speak up. I know it's uncomfortable for them, because some of them, even from their parents, from the love that they've searched from them, some of them maybe have never been told, "I love you, man," or given that type of care and concern. That's
for sure. It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
And it affects us so much. And that's one of the things that, affected me and my father. Mm-hmm. My father was my baseball coach. He was a great guy and everything like that. But he didn't know how to love his children as God intended. And I never had ever received that I can remember. Now, he might have done that, and I just don't remember it, but I just cannot remember him ever telling me that he loved me. Now, my mother did. My mother showed great love, and my dad showed us love too. He showed us love by doing things for us. You know, if we needed a car, he'd go down to the bank, get the money, and get us the car, you know, and that type of thing, you know. So that's what we see a lot in these men when they come in. There's a lot of dysfunction in that area where they've come from a broken, household. And I'm not necessarily saying that every addict comes from a broken household.
Right.
That's not the case at all. I'm not saying that at all, because there's some addicts that come from pretty good households, godly household. Mine was one of them. God was in the center of everything, but there was a disconnect there that caused me to step off that path that they had placed in my life. And but in any case, for these men to go through the socialgram and to deal with it, they're looking at truth. We're getting them to see truth about themselves that they may not see themselves. Yeah. And others around us tend to see things in us before we see it. And so that's what the socialgram is all about. It's speaking the truth that we see in a person that we care about, we love, and we want to see grow, and vice versa. So also not only giving, but they have to receive that as well. Receiving somebody, it's easy to receive a caution, but it's not so easy to receive that affirmation sometimes. That hey man, I love you, and it's. I like to. They squirm a little bit.
Sure, yeah, it's uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable, and that's generally what's the best thing for us, to get us out of our comfort zones, so we can learn. Yeah.
Well, listen, man, I have really enjoyed this conversation. I think I want to thank you for being a part of this. This is an inaugural podcast. This is going to be extremely exciting. We've got a lot of people on the menu that are going to be coming with great expertise of all different angles about the topic of addiction. And, I would never go to my mother's house without, we'd go to have a huge dinner. My mother loved to cook. She was a great cook, and she could bake, man. I mean, telling you, some of the things that she baked. I still have the recipes today, and we still attempt to try to make them as good as they were. But you would never leave her house as an adult. We would never leave without a to-go box, right? I mean, she would pack up the food. No, take this food, you'll have it. She always did that. I've had an opportunity to travel around the world, and I worked on a cruise line for a long time, and been in every port on the water about a couple hundred days out of the year for several years. And it was always interesting when I'm over in Europe. Typically, they would say, instead of, do you want this to go, it was takeaway. So it's always a takeaway. So here we are at the kitchen table. Great conversation. Again, it's fitting. What would be the takeaway? What's the food that we're going to pack up and leave with our listeners? What's the takeaway for today?
I have two takeaways for two different categories. Number one, the addict. I don't care where you're at, what situation that you find yourself in, there's hope. You can make a choice today to turn something around, to turn your life around. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some hard work. But with everything else in life, hard work brings success. Yeah. And secondly, hope also for families. There is hope for your loved one. And no matter where they're at, no matter what you see, don't let the enemy steal that hope from you. And I think that's, out of all of this that we've talked about today, that's one takeaway that I would like to both of those two categories to take away from here. Yeah. There is hope, period.
I love it, man. What a great message. Thank you so much.
My
Tim,
pleasure.
Just great to have you here, man. And we've got some great times ahead of us. I also want to thank the Great Greek Mediterranean Grill for sponsoring us today. Check out the ones in Maitland, Orlando Sky House, Winter Garden. Orlando Lake Nona, and the newest one in Celebration. Please check that out. This podcast, as I mentioned before, is not the end-all, be-all for your addiction. This is just the beginning of your journey towards sobriety and for helping someone else reach that goal too. You can be a part of that. There might be some of you who are out there trying to begin a recovery class at your church or your social event. Man, there's going to be some great tools in here for you to be able to apply. If you need help, listen, if you need help, please call us at 407-293-3822. 407-293-3822. You'll talk to our intake specialist, and we want to help you. We want to help you take your next steps towards a life of victory. And if you're listening to us on YouTube, hey, please hit the like button if you enjoyed this and you follow us on YouTube or all of our social media pieces of Facebook. Those are on the screen, all of that in the link below. And please share this podcast with people who might be able to relate to our conversation here. If you have any questions, again, put them in the comments below, and we'll try to answer them on our next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Addiction Kitchen. We will definitely see you next time. Thanks again. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe, like, and share it on YouTube or Facebook. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll know when our next episode drops. We'd also love to hear from you. So drop your questions or comments below, and we'll do our best to address them in the future episodes.